Hey everyone, welcome to George's Library. This is George, and today I want to talk about The Return of the King by J.R.R. Tolkien. Boy, this was a long journey. I think I started reading the Silmarillion during the summer. It was a very long ride, very satisfactory, but here we are at the end of our Middle Earth journey. Finally, we are at The Return of the King, and the story picks up exactly where The Two Towers ended. This book, similarly to the previous ones, split into two parts. The first part follows what happens to Merry, Pippin, Gandalf, Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli after their journey to Isengard, all the way to when the troops of Middle-earth faces off against Sauron at the Black Gates in Mordor, where we have the last big climactic battle. Practically half of this book is a build up to that big battle at the end. And it is different in the way the story is told because yes, you do have the build up to the battle, and then you have the big battle, which covers a good number of chapters as well, and it's an extraordinary uh, part. Then the story jumps back to Frodo and Sam's journey, and that one ends halfway through the second part, and then the rest of the second part is about their journey back home and the consequences of war upon the Shire and the rest of the world. So it's for people who are not familiar with the books by now. Um, it is different, and it is quite, well, I wouldn't say unique, but I can see that a lot of other fantasy writers definitely have taken inspiration from this when building up their stories. I enjoyed the first part more than the second part. I thought the build up was extraordinary. I cried, I laughed, and then I cried again. It was very intense and very emotional. I loved it. And like I said, then the second part feels like it was just broken down into many subsections. The second part first narrates what happens to Frodo and Sam all the way to Mordor, well, technically to Mount Doom. Then we jump back to uh, Sauron facing the troops at the gates. Then we have a chapter about Eowyn and Faramir back home, and you have some details, like you get to see their perspective on what they do while still in Gondor and how the people around them react while this battle is going on out there that it's about to have a big impact on the entire world, really. Oh, and you also have a little love story between Faramir and Eowyn going on. I mean, as a side note, the Lord of the Rings is very renowned for not having too many female protagonists. Yes, it's true. Like you don't have a lot of female characters. It's a very male-centered story. I think yes, I mean it is a very male-centered story. I think the Silmarillion is also very male-centered. I saw an interview of Tolkien answering that, and his explanation was that this is a story about a group of people going to war, and that he didn't have that much space for introducing or adding female characters to it. These were men going to war, and there wasn't plenty of room for any other things. But I mean, in defense to Tolkien, I get his point. I'm not gonna contradict his perspective here. This is a man who fought in World War One. If anyone has a first-hand view of how a war goes on, then I do believe I do believe he knows what he's talking about. And as you can see, whenever he does have room for a female character, he gives you amazing female characters. It's not like he just completely ignores the aspect of that. He probably strongly believed that the male centered perspective is the one he has to show us, and it's probably one that he is most familiar with. But yet again, whenever he has a female character, it's a very extraordinary female character to have. Um, Eowyn, for example, she even goes to war. She fights alongside men. She's a big deal. So I really believe Tolkien had a lot of compensation being done here for the lack of two. I mean, you can clearly say he was. I don't think he was a misogynist. If that was a complaint coming out in the World Wide Web. Eowyn is an extraordinary warrior. She has her battle. She's one of the biggest heroes in this final battle. Galadriel is a complex character on its own, and she definitely has a very big influence on all the characters and the development of the story. She helped a lot, and she helped from the uh, backstage spot. She was always in the background, encouraging the hobbits to carry on, and her gifts had a big influence on the events in the story. Arwen was not that big here. I mean, I in the movies they kind of played a little more on Aragorn and Arwen's love story. You can see more about Arwen and Aragorn's love story if you read the annexes of this book. You have a lot of side notes. Like there's I mean like half of the more than so after you're done with the story, the other half of the book is pretty much just side notes and uh, background stories and everything, and you get a lot of Aragorn and Arwen there if you want to read more about that. You have a couple of chapters that just present you the joyous time they had after the battle was done and after Aragorn's coronation. Then you get to read about the battle for the Shire, and finally, we see how Frodo leaves Middle Earth for the Grey Havens alongside Bilbo and Galadriel, Gandalf, Elrond, and the other elves. Practically, with Aragorn's coronation, the Third Age ends and the Fourth Age begins. And the Fourth Age is meant to be an age of men. So all the elves that were still in Middle Earth will be leaving to the Grey Havens. They're gonna go back to their land, the land of the immortals, and well, practically all of Middle Earth will just be occupied by men. And yes, I the book does feel like it never ends. It's just because it just doesn't. I mean, just when you think you're done with the story, you end up seeing all the appendices at the end. So there you go. Uh, well, the appendices hold a lot of information about the history of Middle Earth and all its races, and by information I mean you have the entire timeline of the history of Middle Earth, including information on what happened to all the members of the Fellowship. It includes tales of old and the love story between Aragorn and Arwen, like I said. It has family trees, and it also had detailed explanations about the language and writing systems of all the elves and dwarves of Middle Earth. I'm still completely amazed on how complex, like how much homework this man did to build his world. Despite all this, Tolkien has masterfully managed to weave all this together in the end of the trilogy. The book started out in the Shire and it ended in the Shire. I can speak for all of us here and say that The Return of the King gave a satisfying conclusion to the story. Tolkien took his time with the ending, made sure that every plot hole is covered, and also I believe it was very important for him to show the readers the after effects of war. As a veteran himself, he probably understood this better than a lot of people, and he found it incredibly important for the audience to know that the war doesn't always end with the big battle. You sometimes take the war with you back home, and the people around you, the world around you, and the rest of your life can be affected. You may never get back. You may never get back. And as he says, some wounds just never heal. You have to learn to carry them with you. Despite all that, the story has a satisfying conclusion. It's a wonderful, wonderful trilogy that I advise everyone to try. Please, if you are a fantasy lover, you probably already read these books. Come on. If you haven't have you if you have never tried fantasy and never much look forward to them, just give these books a try. Believe me, it's more than you think they are. You have these incredible characters, you have this incredible world. I am telling you, it's just a tornado of emotions. And you may think that this is a lot of magic and rainbows and jolly, but there are some very, very sad moments going on in these books, and with them come these very small but powerful sparks of hope that just reminds us where the meaning of life is, where the meaning of life stand, and where, despite all the darkness in our lives and in the world, where we can find our happiness and our little joy that makes everything worthwhile. So, until next time, if you like my reviews, if you want to hear more, just please subscribe to my channel. If you have any comments about this trilogy, then I'm looking forward to hear what you have to say. And stay safe out there. Be kind, and see you next time. Have a good day.